Checks or email.
Really amazing improvements in the last few years, so a lot of really exciting things happening.
Since I will be staying at Waterloo, we also got this for you.
Amy, can you come up here? This will be quick, don't worry about it. And you can join the photos of Glenn while we're up here. I just wanted to recognize Amy. This year I had a big accomplishment. We talked about it at our board meetings where she went through a lot of training, studying, testing, and she got her Ohio EPA qualified data collector status for level 3 fish. Woohoo! This is a really big
So what this means is that Amy can collect data that is recognized by the state, that is high quality, that we can submit to the state of Ohio, and can be used for decision making. It's a really big deal to have somebody who has this.
She's a fish expert, and Heike also coined a fish princess.
We've spent so much of our time working in the watershed right here at home. Somebody figured we'd be otherworldly. I'm an amateur astronomer, and it's become quite a passion of mine, and I like to share what I've learned. I put together this slideshow with some of what I think are either the most amazing things going on out there in the universe, and some that are a little more current, like Pluto. Astronomers get pretty excited about what they're doing. This is the team when they first started to get the pictures back from the New Horizons satellite of the Pluto shots, and they were pretty astounding to everyone. Here's our family portrait. We're going to start a little closer to home. Of course, everybody knows we've got 8 planets. Poor old Pluto, though, got kicked out, right? Would like to see Pluto still be a planet. The tests are got to go around the sun. So everybody knows what you see up there, those planets, they go around the sun. It's got to be round, so it's got to have enough gravity, it's got to be big enough to take a round shape. They all passed that test, but where poor Pluto failed was it didn't pick up the debris in its orbit. This was kind of cute where it says, so you dumped me years ago, but now you're driving by my house real slow. But a lot of times the photos are so enhanced with all the computer techniques they can use and all the filters that when you look through a telescope, especially a small one at home, you don't usually see what you're seeing on the screen. And you know, astrophotographers can take time photography, so they're going to pull in a lot more light. So a lot of people, when you start photography, a lot of folks lose interest because the images aren't like what you see. If you want to see really cool stuff, even like that, just go to your computer. This image was taken from 280,000 miles out, and New Horizons was flying at 36,000 miles an hour, and it's the fastest satellite ever launched. And it got to the moon in, I think it was something like 8 hours, or maybe even less, and it took Apollo missions 3 days to get to the moon, so that's how fast it was going. In spite of that, though, it still took 9 years to get to Pluto, so that tells you how big the solar system is. So there was a Hubble photo in the lower left there of Pluto. That was one of the best images we had before New Horizons. So you can see the level of detail now. It's pretty astounding. And so you can see the dark spots up there. Those are ices, and they think they're like glaciers, only they're exotic ices. The guess right now is that that's nitrogen, and they have that swirling pattern because they're flowing around objects. You know, just like glacial ice on Earth. And right in here are some mountains about the size of our Appalachian Mountains. So that gives you an idea of the scale. So these images are taken from still tens of thousands of miles out. I'm not sure what the closest pass was, but the resolution of the cameras is pretty good. But here you can see even the resolution of New Horizons isn't great, because these are two of the moons of Pluto, taken from around 100,000 to 143,000 miles out. But they're still way better than anything they had before, because these are small objects. These are only 20, 25 miles across, 30 miles across. So they carried the ashes of Clyde Tombaugh, who discovered Pluto in 1930. The satellite is powered by nuclear fuel, because it's too far away from the sun to use solar. They use Jupiter to give it a gravity assist, so you can use other planets, other bodies to do like a slingshot effect. That added 9,000 miles an hour. It would have taken a lot longer to get there, by many years. I thought this was interesting. A week before they were going to do the flyby, it took 9 years, to get out there. A week before they were going to do the flyby, the computer crashed. So I was thinking, some of these scientists, they have spent their entire career for this mission, and what were they thinking? But it was only down an hour. The New Horizons is moving on into the Kuiper Belt, and it'll keep, as long as it has fuel, and that should be for quite a while, it'll keep sending back images of Kuiper Belt out. And one of the neat side effects of New Horizons headed out to Pluto was when it passed Jupiter's moon Io, it took a picture of a volcanic eruption.
Oh my God.
And that's the Temestar volcano erupting there, what you see up on top there. I want to talk a little bit about the solar system. We orbit around a very average sun. There's nothing that extraordinary about the sun except it's our sun. So you got your 8 planets. On the inside, you've got this belt of junk, crud, asteroids that are between Mars and Jupiter. And most of them are in that circle there. Some, though, have some irregular orbits. Icarus in particular there, elliptical orbits. The big thing that we read about is one ever going to hit us. And it is possible. It's very unlikely. Over a long enough time, those odds start to get better. There's constant work going on about that. Ceres is the biggest of the asteroids. This shows the paths of all of the asteroids in relation to Earth and the Sun. It's a little deceiving because space is so vast and these things move so slowly in their orbit on an annual basis that even though those are the paths they take, rarely is one even close to the. I was reading about one, Icarus. Last time it came through in like the mid-80s, it was 10 million miles away. It just came through and it was 5 million miles away. So that's a little disconcerting to a lot of people. But the next time it might be 15 million miles away. So you just never know. But Jupiter in particular, because of its strong gravity, can knock these things out of their normal orbit. Everything's changing out there, but it keeps it interesting. Where we were was in close before. You take a few steps out and you get out past Neptune and you're in what's called the Kuiper Belt. And then in perspective, that's what's over here, that inner ring. And it's like a big donut. The asteroid belt was mostly rocky material. This is mostly icy material. And so this is stuff that was left over from the earliest part of the solar system that for whatever reason either didn't get into the sun or the sun, because of its forces, knocked it out. But it's out past Neptune. It goes 30 astronomical units to 55 astronomical units. Now an astronomical unit is the distance of the sun to the Earth. We have to use astronomical unit because you can't use miles, you can't use those kind of distances because there's just too many zeros involved. So when I say astronomical unit, that's a sun-Earth distance. The Kuiper Belt's 30 sun-Earth distances out it starts. And then the Oort clouds in the Kuiper Belt are what are called short-term comets. Every 200 years or less, the comets come out of there. They're also perturbed by Jupiter. Jupiter perturbs a lot of people. And then the Oort cloud is way out there. It goes all the way up to a light year away. It's huge, but it also generates comets. And it's so big, though, that other stars can perturb it, can knock stuff out of the Oort cloud and actually send it out of our solar system. But that's the outer extent of the solar system.
Bob, is the Oort cloud like in the shape of a ball as opposed to a donut?
Yes, I'm glad you mentioned that. It's a sphere. So most people don't know there are 181 moons in our solar system. I'm not going to go through all that, but Jupiter's got 67 moons, and you know, the biggest and well-known are listed up there. And these are all, you know, relative sizes. Some of those other things we've already looked at, those distances and sizes aren't really real.
So Bob, what's the criteria for a moon?
A moon is something that's got to be in the gravitational pull of another entity.
Does it have to be a spherical though?
Most of these are, but I don't think every moon is a very big sphere. Now look at how small Mars' moons are. So I got a couple of interesting facts about our sun here. It's a giant nuclear furnace, 74% hydrogen, 24% helium, 1% oxygen. So that's pretty much everything. And then there's just some other metals. Anything heavier than helium is a metal to an astronomer. These are serious metals here. So like silicon, sulfur, chromium. Anything heavier than iron is not made in our sun. It's made in a supernova. The sun's diameter is 860,000 miles, or the Earth's is 8,000 miles. You can fit 1,000 Earths side by side in the sun. That's how big it is. You can fit 1 million Earths in the sun. So it's a pretty big place. It takes 1,000 years for the radiation generated in the center to get out of the sun. I don't know why it takes so long. This outer area here, called the convective zone, it is moving all the time. And it's the main generator of sunspots. I like to talk about the relative size of things. And what we think is big really isn't big. It starts with Mercury to Earth. And each one of these, there are 6 panels. The next panel starts with the last one from the previous panel. Okay? So there is Earth right there. okay? You end with Earth, you start with Earth, and you go up to Jupiter there. So here's little old Jupiter, and here's our sun, okay? And here is Sirius. Everybody probably knows Sirius. It's the fourth brightest object in the sky, Sirius. After the sun, the moon, Venus, and Sirius. So there's little old Sirius. And it's only so bright because it's only 8 light years away. So it's close. It's our neighbor. But then look how big Aldebaran is. And that's in Taurus. That'll be coming up now, so you can see that at night. And then little Aldebaran and Betelgeuse. We all know Betelgeuse from Orion. But then the biggest one of all is that VY Canis Majoris. And that is so big, here's how big it is. Whoa. So there is our sun, okay? And there is Canis Majoris. So you can't even see the Earth in that. Stars live lives the way we did. They have an infancy, and we'll start kind of over here, because there's a lot of dust out there. All that dust starts to coalesce. It's not evenly distributed, and because gravity goes on too, some of that dust starts to glom together, and when enough of it gloms together, you can start what's called a protostar. It'll actually ignite. And sometimes you get enough material going and it doesn't ignite, and that becomes a brown dwarf. So a poor brown dwarf never really catches on fire. It'll be warm, you know, something's going on there, but it's not a nuclear thing. So that's one possibility, a brown dwarf. But most of them will go to nuclear ignition, and you'll have a sun like ours, most, you know, very normal sun. But eventually they will burn up their fuel, the gravity decreases, and then they'll puff out some of their material. And so that's when you get to the red giant phase. They're usually not as hot, but they're brighter because they're so big. And then eventually they'll collapse down into either a white dwarf, and then eventually they'll just completely die out into a cinder, a crispy cinder, a black dwarf, and they're floating around out there, but they're not giving off any radiation, so we don't know about it. But what's really cool is, in some circumstances, you get a supernova, and that's where a sun bigger than ours collapses in on itself, and it starts to run away to the point where it explodes back out. And it's one of the most powerful things that can happen in the universe. And then after that, you can get a neutron star or a black hole.
The sun, it goes into a red giant arc. Does supernova come from that, or does it come from just a regular star?
It takes a much bigger star. But
Okay, it starts to strain out, and then it goes to supernova.
right, then it goes to supernova. But it's big enough that its gravity sucks everything back in. And I don't know all the workings of that, but I know it's got to be something bigger than our sun. Our sun won't be a supernova. And here's the future of our sun. 7.5 billion years from now, it will be out to Earth, and just shortly after that, it'll keep expanding and go all the way out to Mars. So Mars might actually be in what's called the Goldilocks zone at some point, where it's just right for life, because there's conjecture that it's had water on it. Might have its moment in the sun, so to speak. So here are just some nice pictures of what can happen when the sun explodes. This is a planetary nebula, and it's called planetary because in a lot of telescopes it looks like a planet. But that in the middle there was a sun, and it's still burning, it's still hot, but it's way reduced because all this other stuff are its shells of gas and material that it's blown out because it's lost its gravity. And again, that's not what it looks like in my backyard telescope. That's probably a Hubble picture. But then a supernova explosion, they don't happen very often. We only know about 5 in the Milky Way. They're way more luminous than the sun. In fact, they're as luminous as all the other billions of stars in the galaxy at the time they go off. They move at 12,000 miles a second. And that's how we get everything heavier than oxygen. So when you hear that we're star stuff, we really are star stuff. You can see this type of thing with a backyard telescope. This is the Pinwheel Galaxy. And one day there's nothing there, and the next day there's that bright dot there, which is a supernova. And they only last for a couple months, a couple weeks maybe, because they're burning stuff so fast, and they're so fast they can't last. And this is what it looks like after a supernova explosion. This one took place in 1054, and you know, the ancient astronomers kept pretty good record. Besides 1054, the other 4 known supernova in our galaxy.
So that was easily seen from Earth without any kind of...
Yeah, they've ID'd stars that will go supernova, or might.
The Star of Bethlehem, perhaps?
Something like that.
Have there been supernovas before 185 CE, but we just don't know about them?
Oh yeah, I mean the Earth is 5 billion years old. There have been 5 that have historic record. So can you imagine waking up one morning and saying, honey, there's something outside our window? But this, I thought this was interesting just because it shows a neutron star, which is what happens after a supernova explosion, and what's left collapses back in on itself, and there's still so much gravity there that this thing weighs, a sugar cube size will weigh 100 million tons. Now that, you can't even wrap your head around that, but that just tells you how much empty space there is out there. They just found one that spins over 700 times a second. And that's what's called a pulsar. When every time one of those spins, it breaks the magnetic field, and radio telescopes can pick up a click. But then even cooler than that, this is like the biggest deal in the universe, gamma ray burst, which is a black hole. Supernova goes off and falls back in on itself. It can form into a black hole if it was big enough. So a black hole keeps sucking in material, and as it does so, the material it's sucking in will give off these gamma ray bursts. And they say it's, as I wrote here, equivalent to 1,000 Earths vaporized every second. We only see them if they're pointed right at us. We're not aware of too many of these. These are just artist renditions. Now, nobody sees that. First of all, you can't see a gamma ray. They pick them up with specialized scopes. Nobody has seen a black hole either. The edge of a black hole is called the event horizon. Astronomers can see stars swirling around these things getting sucked into them, but they eventually get to that event horizon and then light can't escape because the gravity is so intense. These are just typical looking near-Earth objects, any one of which in that asteroid belt could hit the Earth. One of the theories of how the moon was made was a very large object hit the Earth in its infancy, and they even named it Theia. So when the Earth was still young, it hit, and they think it was a glancing blow, because if something as big as that, relative to the Earth, hit directly, it would probably just blow the Earth apart. You know, we wouldn't exist. But if it hit hard enough that glanced off, then, you know, you could end up with something like that, a moon-sized object out there, and it would pick up the loose pieces over time, or they'd fall backwards. Yeah, so, you know, and maybe it wasn't the end of the world completely, but it was probably the end of their world. When Theia hit, there was no life, but over time there have been other hits, like this one. The object that hit was about 50 meters across, they say, and this is Barringer Crater or Meteor Crater out in Arizona, and that's like 2/3 of a mile across. So imagine something 50 meters across, traveling with 27,000 miles an hour, hitting the Earth. That would, you feel that one. This is in Germany, and this is a town built in a meteor crater. Nordlingen, Bavaria. I was thinking, you know, if the mayor of that town flies over, I hope he'd recognize something's a little different about his town. And this is the wall outside the town, the crater wall. All around it, it looks like that. So this was in the news recently. This is Comet P67. It looks to be like two objects that collided and kind of got glommed together. But this is mostly ice and dusts. And it would be out in that Kuiper belt or the Oort cloud where it got booted out. And so I think it's on a trajectory now to fly by Earth. But this was a mission Rosetta. And here's what that would look like over Los Angeles. So that gives you a size perspective. But, honey, have you looked out the bedroom window? So we all know the Milky Way wasn't made with milk, right? But it's all the stars out there that look like milk because we don't see the individual stars, most of them. This is our galaxy, and it's over 100,000 light years across, and we're like a quarter of the way into it on one of these arms here. So I think we're on the Orion arm, which comes out of the, Sagittarius arm. When we're stargazing though, like backyard stargazing, all we're seeing is stuff right here. I mean, there's so much gas and dust in the way that you can't see any farther than just, stuff right in there. Somewhere in the middle of our galaxy though is a black hole that's hundreds of thousands of solar masses.
Bob, are we going towards the black hole or going out? Which way it's going?
It takes 250 million years to do this. The Earth is 4.5 billion years old. So we've been around the galaxy a lot of times. I don't know how old the galaxy is, but it's existed way before our solar system too. Our galaxy is going to collide with the next closest galaxy. You've all heard of Andromeda Galaxy. So that's right out there, that little dot. And over time, and it's going to take a few million years, it's going to get closer and closer and closer until it actually moves right through us and comes back and will evolve into an elliptical galaxy that's, as big as both of us. Chances are, stars won't even hit in that. There's so much empty space that even with that type of immense thing going on, 2 stars probably won't collide.
No gravity interference or anything?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's all about gravity, but there's just so much space that gravity doesn't pull anything close enough to actually collide. It slingshots through and then pulls itself back. It's kind of like dough or taffy. It's like making taffy. This is about dark energy. We know dark energy's out there because the universe keeps expanding. And nobody can figure out why the heck it keeps expanding, but it does. So is there some force pushing things apart? Because common physics said gravity should pull it all back together. Nobody's making more energy, but there's some kind of dark energy out there that keeps expanding. 68% of all the energy out there is energy. 27% of it is dark matter. And nobody knows what that is either, but they know it's got to be there because the way the planets and all the stuff that we do know interact, it can't be explained unless there's, a huge amount of this other stuff called dark matter. This is it, folks. I thought I'd end with a Hubble deep sky image, and this is, I think, the coolest thing because first they had a big argument, should we even do this? Because the Hubble telescope, it's so valuable, the time, all the astronomers want on it. So they had a big argument, should we just point it somewhere and see what we see? And for a long time they said, no way, we're not going to do that. But the guy who runs the thing carried some weight, he said, we are going to do that. So they pointed it at this pretty blank part of the sky out in Ursa Major, the Big Bear, the Big Dipper, and let it go for like a week. And this is what they got, 3,000 galaxies. When you think, are we alone, I'd say, nah. So that's that. That's your universe.
great big earth-moving monster machine. It stands 10 stories high, and the ground it can eat, it's a sight. It can root out 100 tons at a bite. Yes, the ground it can eat, it's a fact, but it can't put it back. No, they can't put it back. They come and tell me I've got to move to make way for that big machine. But I ain't a-moving unless they kill me, like they kill the fish in my stream. Well, look at that big machine go. It took that shady grove a long time to grow. You can rip it down in just one whack, but they can't put it back. No, they can't put it back.
Yep, that's right.
Was that depressing? You don't have to go too far from here where we're sitting to see sort of the same thing going on, whether you know it or not. How many of you have been to Monday Creek or Sunday Creek?
Yeah.
Have you seen the water running orange? It still runs orange after 100 years. It seems like wherever these extractive industries are, they're taking more than they're giving back, of course. They're extracting more, we all know that. And it's always a struggle and a fight. I'm just amazed that this government would have probably started allowing this mining to resume. That's what's happening in West Virginia. I grew up in the coal mining region of Virginia, Wise County. My grandfather was a coal miner. He was an independent coal miner, and he was what you call a dog hole miner. 30-inch coal, if you can imagine working all day down 30 inches digging coal. It's pretty bad. We have better safety standards and requirements in this country than they do for the dog holes. You have to put out what they call rock dust to keep the coal dust down from the walls and the floor, and so there won't be an explosion. If something goes off and sparks, or it'll keep the explosion down. So I'm going to sing you a little song to sort of lighten up the load. Put on your knee pads and your safety toes. We're going to the coal mines where the coal is low. Riding on a lizard in the 30-inch coal. See the cable sparkling, watch the little wheels roll. Now, Lord, have mercy on a miner's soul, down on his poor knees in the 30-inch coal. Well, timber up the headings, drive the wedges tight, or your wife and children you won't see tonight. And spread out a little rock dust, spread out a little more, to keep that coal dust on the mining floor. We're riding on a lizard in the 30-inch coal. See the cable sparkling, watch the little wheels roll. Now, Lord, have mercy on a miner's soul, down on his poor knees in the 30-inch coal. The Lizard was a small, low-to-the-ground motorized machine, electric, and they had electric in the mine, so it ran on a cable, and that's how it got its electricity. It's stuck up to the top of the 30-inch coal and goes on down like that, and the motor runs back and forth. See the cable sparkling, watch the little wheels roll. In 2002, there was a sludge spill in Martin County, Kentucky. Sludge is what happens when you wash coal. You wash all the impurities you can get out of it, and that's very poisonous stuff. And you pump it off to a pond, and you store it in that pond. Well, in Martin County, where they filmed Kentucky Woman with Ned Beatty and Cheryl Ladd about a woman going into the coal mine for the first time, they have finally allowed that in the early 70s. But I digress. This pond, the sludge pond or a silt pond, it was above coal mines that had been mined out. So down underneath there were cavities in the ground that led out to the creeks. And so finally the water pressure was so heavy that it leached a hole and dumped thousands, millions of gallons of sludge down this creek and ruined people's gardens, their yards, came out all the way up to their houses, and it was poisonous stuff. The state troopers of Kentucky were given orders not to let the press in. They taped off any entrance to the place, and if you tried to go in, they would turn you away if you were from the press, so you couldn't go in and take pictures of this thing that was 5 times bigger than the Exxon Valdez spill. So, and it was the biggest spill in the eastern part of this country, probably the whole country. But did the New York Times cover it? Does anybody remember? 2000.
It did take place though in 2002, early spring.
Right.
Was it? Yeah, that was only 3 or 4 months after 9/11, so that was
right.
when the news was still focused.
Exactly. So Robert, he knew some people that lived there, so he called them up and they met him, and he put his camera in their trunk, and he went in. They went out for groceries and met him, and he got in the car with them. And he was able to go in there and film when CBS and ABC and CNN and all those people couldn't get in. So some of this footage you'll see tonight also appeared on 60 Minutes and some other CBS work. They bought footage from Robert because he had the only footage that was shot. We were real proud of Robert for that. And Robert is making films now up in Rhinebeck, New York. He's still a member of Appleshop, the Appalachian Film Workshop. Now let's watch Sludge.
did not touch a needle since 2011. And now I've just picked it up again, and I'm refreshed. I have new energy, I have new idea.
Good for you.
And just with this, made this.
I know I've been looking at it, I like it.
Yeah, I just started going to the Wednesday knitters again. And so I said, oh, we're going to do a steampunk thing. I said, oh, you know, steampunk, I can do something with that. It's just nice to be refreshed and also, you know, I'm not trying to earn a living with it anymore, so I can just kick back and enjoy myself and admire other people's projects without wondering why they didn't buy the yarn from me and